At the beginning of the year, we posted a video about how amazing the number 2025 is.
We did. And I said that not all the facts that we mentioned about 2025 were quite as amazing as each other. So we'd make another video talking about all those facts and saying how amazing each one of those facts was.
Rank their amazingness.
Yeah. And that video is this one. 2025 is a square number. 2025 is actually 45 squared. We know that it's 45 squared because you can square a number that ends in 5 just by taking the other bit, in this case it's 4, times it by the next number, which is 5. So 4 times 5 is 20, and then you just put 25 on the end. That's how you square a number that ends in 5. The next time that the year will be a square year will be when it is 46 squared.
2116.
Which is 2116, which is quite a long time away. So yeah, being a square number is quite good. Right, 2025 is the sum of 2 squares. Lots of numbers are the sum of 2 squares. We know that 2025 is the sum of 2 squares because Pythagoras' theorem says that in any right angled triangle, that squared plus that squared equals that squared. So if 2025 turned out to be the square of the hypotenuse of a right angled triangle, then it's obviously can be written as the sum of 2 squares. And it turns out that it can, because if we think about the most common right angled triangle that we know about, which is the 3, 4, 5 right angled triangle, 5 squared is 25, and we know that 2025 is a multiple of 25. It's actually 81 times 25. Now, if 81 is 9 squared, what that means is if we enlarge this triangle by a scale factor of 9, and we get the side length 27, 36, and 45, then this will work in Pythagoras' theorem. So we have 27 squared plus 36 squared equals 45 squared. Which makes an interesting pattern, doesn't it, Grace? This is your bit. This is where you said you would come and interrupt me after I've said.
Sorry,
after I've said all that.
I was messing with calculators. Yeah. Okay, so I noticed when he was doing this earlier that it goes 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7. I think that's quite cool.
So even though being the sum of 2 squares isn't particularly amazing in and of itself, because it turns out that out of all the numbers between 1 and 2025, 625 of those numbers can be written as the sum. I get the right word in a minute. The sum of 2 squares. It's not that exciting from that point of view. I think this does kind of redeem it a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it can be written as the sum of 2 squares in such a
beautiful way.
Yeah, a lovely, nice, the kind of thing you could have on a t-shirt, isn't it? Yeah. Right, 45 squared, 2025 is the product of 2 squares. This is not very exciting at all, because if you think about it, 2025 being 45 times 45, right, as long as this isn't a prime number, as long as 45 isn't prime, which it isn't, because it's 9 times 5, then of course we can pair these numbers up and we can pair these numbers up, and so 81 times 25 is 2025. So the only time that a square number can't be written as the product of 2 squares is if this number is prime. And 45 isn't prime, 46 isn't prime, 47 is prime, so but that's a long way away, isn't it? What's 47 squared?
2,209.
So in the year 2209, that will be a square year that isn't the product of 2 squares, but this is just not very interesting. Right, 2025 is the sum of 3 squares. Being the sum of 3 squares is not very exciting at all. There's a theorem called Legendre's 3-square theorem, which says lots of numbers can be written as the sum of three squares. Not all of them. From the numbers from 1 to 2025, 1,689 of them can be written as the sum of three squares. So that is, what's that? That is 83% of them. So not very exciting at all. Right, 2025 is the sum of four squares. This is not remotely interesting. There's a famous theorem called Lagrange's four-square theorem. And what Lagrange's four-square theorem says is that any positive whole number can be written as the sum of four square numbers. The theorem itself is interesting. It's interesting, the fact that any positive whole number can be written as the sum of four squares is interesting. But that means the fact that 2025 can be written in that way is not interesting at all. Right, 2025 can be written as the sum of five square numbers. This is not interesting either, because if you think about it, Lagrange's four-square theorem says that any number can be written as the sum of four squares, which means that 2024 can be written as the sum of four squares, which means all I've got to do is write 2024 as the sum of four squares and then add one squared to it, and I'll get 2025. So every number can be written as the sum of five squares. Right, 2025 is the sum of the first 9 cubes. That's quite an amazing fact. That's not going to happen again for another 1,000 years, isn't it, until it's the sum of the first 10 cubes. So yeah, that's a brilliant fact. Right, so 2025, if we take the number and split it down the middle and put a plus sign in the middle and square it, we get 2025. Now this fact was mentioned by the Scottish maths teacher Chris Smith in his newsletter. This is where I got this from. And in that newsletter, he said that there are 4 numbers where you can do this. So a little puzzle for you is, can you find the other 3 numbers? But this is quite special. I think this is quite a really good fact about 2025.
There's not 4 of them, there's 3 of them. It's right here. Can you not read? Can you find the other 2 examples?
Right, so the last fact was the fact that 2025 is a square number, and if we add 1 to each of the digits, you get 3136, which is a square number. I actually found this out when I was reading a book about number theory, that if I remember, I'll put it on the screen so you can see what that book is. And what 3136 is what you get if you square 56. Yeah, that's right.
Never said the number.
Yeah, you needed to know that. Right. So, that's all the facts that are on the video. I don't know what order you would put them in, but this is the order that we're going to put them in.